Middle-earth is built on 7 major races, each with thousands of years of history, countless clans, and more than a few individuals who made spectacularly bad decisions. But within each race, one character stands above the rest, a single figure whose actions reshape events on a scale no one else from their people ever matches. This breakdown focuses on those 7 defining individuals, one per race, explaining exactly why they matter, what they did, and how their choices ripple across the ages. Hobbits. Frodo Baggins. Frodo Baggins is the single most important hobbit in Middle-earth's history because he undertakes the one mission that no king, warrior, or ancient immortal ever could, carrying the One Ring into the heart of Mordor with the intention of destroying it.
I will take the ring to Mordor.
Frodo inherits the ring from Bilbo at the age of 33, long before he understands its nature or the consequences of being its bearer. His role is defined not by strength or battle prowess, both of which are entirely absent, but by endurance. This endurance is the mental and spiritual capacity to resist corruption longer than any other mortal known in the Third Age. Frodo's importance comes from the fact that the quest relies on restraint, secrecy, and vulnerability, rather than force. The kingdoms of men, the High Elven lords, and even Gandalf cannot approach Mordor without provoking immediate war. Frodo, by contrast, can move unnoticed, and his smallness becomes a strategic advantage. His journey reveals the true effect of the ring on a mortal mind: progressive psychological decay, loss of will, and fragmentation of identity. In practical terms, Frodo succeeds only because his mission is built on cooperation, Sam's support, Gandalf's planning, Aragorn's protection, and the unlikely interference of Gollum, whose obsession becomes the final catalyst that ensures the destruction of the ring. Frodo is the most important hobbit because Middle-earth's survival hinges entirely on the success or failure of his single task. No hobbit before or after him alters the fate of the world on such a scale. Men. Aragorn. Aragorn, son of Arathorn, is the direct heir of Isildur, the line of kings thought by many to be extinct, irrelevant, or at best, a rumor politely ignored for centuries. Born in 2931 of the Third Age, he represents the unbroken bloodline that ties the ancient kingdom of Arnor in the north to Gondor in the south. His life serves as the central stabilizing force for the realms of men during the final confrontation with Sauron. Aragorn's importance comes from 3 converging roles. First, he is a Dunedain ranger, trained in stealth, survival, and warfare. This ensures he's useful long before anyone cares about his crown. Second, he is a leader capable of unifying disparate peoples, Rangers, Gondorians, Rohirrim, and even the dead of Dunharrow, who historically have not taken orders from anyone with a pulse. Third, he is the rightful king, able to restore Gondor's authority after generations of decline under the stewards. His presence validates ancient prophecies, strengthens alliances, and provides a counterweight to Sauron's expanding power. Aragorn's character blends diplomacy, military command, and a strong resistance to the ring, traits men rarely manage simultaneously. His decisions directly influence the Fellowship's survival, the coordination of the Free Peoples, and the final diversion at the Black Gate that allows Frodo to reach Mount Doom. Without Aragorn, the race of men would remain fractured, leaderless, and strategically inferior, conditions Sauron historically finds very convenient. Elves. Galadriel. Galadriel is the most influential elf remaining in Middle-earth during the Third Age, combining ancient lineage, immense age, and political authority. Born in the years of the trees before the First Age, she witnessed events stretching from the rebellion of the Noldor to the downfall of Sauron. Her power is not simply magical, it is rooted in a combination of wisdom, strategic judgment, and a disciplined restraint that other elves, particularly those who enjoyed sword-swinging a bit too much, did not always demonstrate. Galadriel rules the realm of Lothlorien alongside Celeborn, but her influence extends far beyond its borders. She bears one of the 3 elven rings, Nenya, which allows her to preserve and protect her realm against decay and intrusion. This preservation is not immortality, but a kind of sustained resistance against the natural fading of elfkind in Middle-earth. It maintains beauty, clarity, and time itself in a near stasis. This makes Lothlorien appear timeless, though the effect vanishes the moment she departs, revealing how much of its wonder exists solely through her will. Her most important role in the War of the Ring is as a stabilizing force. Characters seek her counsel because she sees beyond immediate threats and understands the long-term consequences of choices. When Frodo offers her the One Ring, she refuses with full awareness of what she could become if she accepted it, an all-powerful tyrant draped in the aesthetic of a benevolent goddess. Her rejection marks the final test of her long rebellion against ambition, completing a character arc that began thousands of years earlier in Valinor. Galadriel's significance lies in her embodiment of an elf who survives ages of conflict without succumbing to despair, corruption, or apathy. She does not simply persist. She influences history, shapes alliances, and intervenes decisively at key turning points. Her support of the Fellowship, resistance to Sauron, and preservation of Lothlorien all make her the single most important elven figure of the age. Dwarves, Thorin Oakenshield. Thorin II Oakenshield is the single most important dwarf for understanding how the fate of Erebor and much of northern Middle-earth shifted in the late Third Age. Born into exile after the dragon Smaug destroyed the kingdom under the mountain, Thorin carries the burden of a dispossessed royal line. His central motivation is the restoration of his people's homeland and patrimony, a goal that defines every major action he takes. Thorin's importance comes from uniting 12 companions for an extremely unlikely mission, reclaiming one of the most heavily fortified and dragon-occupied strongholds in all of Middle-earth. He reshapes dwarven politics by rallying a fractured people, reawakening alliances with men and elves, usually by arguing with them first, and pushing events that ultimately redraw the map of the North. Thorin's flaws, particularly his susceptibility to dragon sickness, illustrate the dangers of dwarven greed and the corruptive influence of treasure, yet they also clarify the strength of dwarven willpower when he regains his clarity and acts according to his better nature. Even though the quest ends in tragedy for Thorin personally, its outcome permanently restores a dwarven kingdom, reshapes regional power, and opens the path for later events in The Lord of the Rings. In short, without Thorin, there is no reclaimed Erebor, no alliance at the Battle of Five Armies, and significantly more dragon-related problems for everyone else. Wizards, Gandalf. Gandalf is one of the 5 Istari, divine spirits sent from the West in the Third Age to rally the free peoples against Sauron. His true nature is that of a Maya, a lesser angelic being, which gives him greater spiritual authority than his humble, wandering exterior suggests. Tolkien describes Gandalf as the only wizard who consistently understood his mission, to advise and empower the peoples of Middle-earth, not dominate or rule over them. This restraint is central to his importance. He travels widely, studying the movements of Sauron, resisting his influence, and building alliances across races that rarely cooperate without strong encouragement. When he becomes Gandalf the White, he assumes the authority Saruman abandoned, gaining enhanced clarity, presence, and power over evil forces. His intervention shifts the balance at Helm's Deep, his guidance anchors the Fellowship, and his strategy leads to the final march on the Black Gate. Gandalf's value comes from his combination of wisdom, mobility, and refusal to give in to despair, even when most others, including several kings, were busy doing just that. And of course, he is the only major strategist in Middle-earth who seems to understand schedules. Saruman delays, Denethor sulks, and even elves take centuries to make decisions. Gandalf? He sets a date. Ents, Treebeard. Treebeard, also known by his elvish name Fangorn, is the eldest of the Ents and possibly the oldest living creature in Middle-earth who isn't a god, a Maya, or a dragon the size of a small mountain. Created in the very early days of Arda, he was intended to be a shepherd of the forests, a guardian figure who could speak to trees, understand their moods, and react when anything threatened them. His importance comes from 2 factors. First, he represents the natural world's slow but unstoppable response to industrial destruction. Saruman's felling of the forests around Isengard prompts Treebeard to rouse the Ents, a process that takes time, because Ents do not do anything quickly unless absolutely forced. Once awakened, however, they march on Isengard with overwhelming force, destroying Saruman's war machine and ending his ability to supply armies to Mordor. Second, Treebeard acts as a historical memory. His long lifespan gives him knowledge that predates the kingdoms of men, the rings of power, and even many elven realms. When he interacts with Merry and Pippin, his perspective reveals the scale of Middle-earth's long decline, forests shrinking, Entwives vanishing, and the wildlands becoming increasingly vulnerable. Without Treebeard's intervention, Saruman's power would have continued to grow unchecked, likely altering the balance of the entire war. His actions show that even beings who take 3 hours to finish saying good morning can still change the course of world events. Orcs and Uruk-hai, Gothmog. Gothmog, the lieutenant of Morgul, is the highest-ranking orc commander we directly encountered during the War of the Ring. While Tolkien gives no physical description, leaving later adaptations to portray him with varying degrees of unfortunate dermatology, what is clear is his authority. When the Witch King is destroyed on the Pelennor fields, it is Gothmog who immediately assumes command of the armies of Mordor. That succession alone establishes his importance. He is effectively second in command of Sauron's ground forces during the largest battle of the Third Age. Gothmog organizes the counter-assault that nearly collapses the Rohirrim line, redirects fresh troops into Minas Tirith's outer levels, and attempts to encircle Aragorn's reinforcements at the Harland. His role demonstrates the operational structure of Mordor's armies: brutal, regimented, and resilient even after catastrophic losses. Gothmog's leadership also reveals an essential truth about orc hierarchy. Authority is not granted because one is wise, noble, or inspiring, but because one is marginally less likely to be stabbed by one's own soldiers. His ability to maintain command under those conditions is, in its own dark way, rather impressive. Gothmog's defeat during the Battle of the Pelennor Fields marks the turning point of Sauron's offensive in the west. After his death, Mordor's forces lose cohesion, giving Gondor and Rohan the opening needed to retake the field. His downfall doesn't carry the tragic grandeur of a fallen king or ancient spirit. It simply removes the last competent organizer in Sauron's western assault, which for an orc is about as close to a heroic legacy as one can get. Dragons. Smaug. Smaug is the most important dragon of the Third Age and the clearest example of what happens when a creature combines raw power, malice, and a deeply unhealthy obsession with glittering objects. He is a fire drake of immense age, descended from the great dragons Morgoth unleashed in the First Age. By the time he appears in The Hobbit, he is the last truly dominant dragon left in Middle-earth. Smaug's defining act is the destruction of Erebor and the city of Dale. Using flame, wings, and the element of surprise, which in his case is mostly arrive screaming from the sky, he annihilates 2 thriving kingdoms in a single night. His occupation of the Lonely Mountain reshapes the entire political and economic landscape of the region, displacing dwarves, impoverishing men, and making approaching the mountain a very poor life choice. Strategically, Smaug controls one of the most defensible positions in Middle-earth. His lair is filled with centuries of wealth, and he uses it both as a symbol of dominance and a comfortable sleeping arrangement. His hide is nearly invulnerable, though a single gap in his armor, exposed only because he enjoyed showing off, becomes the key to his downfall at the hands of Bard. Smaug's importance is not limited to his physical destruction. His death triggers the political chain reaction that leads to the Battle of 5 Armies, the re-establishment of the Kingdom Under the Mountain, and the rise of Dale. In other words, even in death, he remains inconveniently influential. For your next deep dive, watch The Entire First Age of Middle-earth Explained, where the world was younger, the stakes were larger, and the disasters were, somehow, far more dramatic.